The National Household Survey of Drug Use, which NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, has been conducting since 1977, pretty well indicates that drug use by ethnic group is pretty much uniform. It's the consequences of drug use that becomes problematic. So African Americans and Latinos are much more likely to be arrested, tried, convicted, and sent to jail as a result of their drug use than members of other groups.
Government studies show that black people don't use drugs any more than white people, but black men are still 12 times more likely to go to prison for drug crimes than white men, according to a 2008 report from Human Rights Watch.
A lot of white people I know use a lot of drugs. It's just they use them differently.
They don't get caught.
They got the money.
They use the more expensive drugs.
That's right, and they don't go out in the street to buy them.
Secretive about it.
Or more in a closet.
More, yeah.
Well, the drugs are delivered to their home by guys with cell phones.
In the late 1990s, Dr. Drucker conducted a study in New York State and Florida. It compared prison sentences given to blacks and whites for the same or similar drug crimes.
In New York State prisons, for every white person in prison for drugs, there were 30 or 40 black people in prison for drugs. We looked at Florida also in the same way, and there we actually found the overdose rate for whites was higher than it was for blacks. But in fact, the incarceration, imprisonment rate for blacks was still 30 times what it was for whites.
And prisons have the highest HIV rate in the country, 2.5 times higher than the general population.
It's estimated that 1 out of every 4 people currently living with HIV has been in prison at some point in time.
Where you see a high rate of HIV, often you see a high rate of migration, of people moving around. In the US, one of the migrations that we are seeing is around going to prison and coming back from prison.
On top of that, condoms are not allowed in federal prisons or in most jails, even though they help reduce the spread of HIV.
Why do you think condoms aren't given out at federal prisons?
Well, perhaps one of the reasons is that to give out condoms is to acknowledge that sex is happening. To acknowledge that sex is happening might mean, to a prison, to acknowledge that they're not having the kind of control that people would expect them to have